Hi and welcome to the Geek Legion of Doom. This is going to be a horror movie review. We're going to be looking at Fright Night today. Not the remake version starring Colin Farrell, I'm talking about the 1985 original version. Now I'll say from the get-go, this is actually one of my favourite films of all time, so if you're a hater you're probably not going to watch this video. So let's get on with it. So if you've seen the original version, sorry, if you've seen the remake and not this version, the story's actually fairly similar but with some differences. So in both versions, the story consists of a young teenager or young adult teenager called Charley Brewster, who in this version is a big horror movie buff, and he has a new neighbour that moves next door, and he starts to suspect after a series of incidents that he may actually be a vampire, and of course he's actually correct. So like with the remake, he gathers up a couple of friends, his girlfriend and a friend of his, or semi-friend of his at least, to try and get people to believe him, but of course they don't, and eventually enlist the help of someone called Vincent, who is in this version a horror movie host who presents kind of late night B movies on TV. You don't really get that these days, hence why they changed it for the later version. But in this time when this was made, 1985, they were still around. So, and he's played by Roddy McDowall, who I would say that is my favourite role that he's ever played. Absolutely brilliant. As a kind of cowardly hero, really. What happens is, obviously, they start to believe that they are really vampires, and the vampire tries to essentially defend himself by kidnapping Charlie's girlfriend, and obviously the good guys got to go and get him back. Now, it's certainly not a comedy film, but there are comedic moments in it. Some of the dialogue, I think, is pretty funny. One of the things I would say, it maybe hasn't aged particularly well. Certainly, there's some massive 80s fashion in here. Charley Brewster's haircut, I'm talking to you. But it still, I think, still holds its own if you're interested in this type of thing. There are some elements in this what I think far outdo the remake. I think the soundtrack is fantastic. It is a really sometimes haunting music you have in it. I really can sort of highly recommend the soundtrack. And also I think the vampire is significantly different in this one as well. And what I mean by that is the two major differences I would say are he's a little bit more sympathetic in this one. So Jerry Dandridge, who's the vampire, played by Chris Sarandon, I think it is again his best role, is a bit more sympathetic. So he actually gives Charlie the chance to back off and kind of just forget about him initially, which doesn't happen in the remake, which kind of gives you a bit more sympathy towards him. And I think also he's far more seductive. There's a scene in a nightclub where he's kind of mesmerising Amy, his girlfriend, and you kind of really feel like this sort of magnetism that's kind of going on between them. I think it's brilliant. So some of the scenes in this I think are fantastic. To be honest with you, I'm hard pressed to find faults with it, other than the fact that it really hasn't aged well. But obviously for the time, you can't really complain about that. So this is actually going to be one of my favourite films, and it's going to be a fairly high mark. I'm going to give this one a 9 out of 10. Let me know what you think of it. What did you think of the sequel as well, Fright Night 2? Leave me a comment, and I'll look forward to seeing you next time. See you later.